Your boys are back. Welcome to In Rotation Podcast. Your boys are back. Welcome back to In Rotation Podcast. I'm B. We have with us today Jer, Nick, and Jay. What's up, guys?
What's up, B?
Excited for episode 4, where we're going to be talking about Jack Harlow's Sweet Action. Sweet Action. All right, guys, what do you think about this? We'll go to Nick first.
Yeah, so I like this album. It's a short little 15, 16-minute album. You know, there's a lot of fun stuff in there. I hadn't heard Jack Harlow before this, so it was a pretty cool introduction to me. You know, there's some cool stuff we'll talk about with such a short album, you know what I mean? But a couple things off the bat, you know, I kind of like his the way that he does his little rhymes. He's got some subtleties in his rhymes and his cadence to the way he makes those rhymes. I like a lot of the really simple beat structures, you know, different than some of the more high profile artists that we talk about sometimes, as far as having these crazy, like highly produced stuff. Like there's a kind of almost more of an indie feel to some of the production there, which is good for me because that usually sets someone up to just spit bars over those basic beats, you know? But yeah, he writes some great hooks, he make catchy melodies. So, you know, overall pretty excited to talk about this, this little, I don't know if you call it EP or whatever, but yeah, there's a lot to like on this short little album for sure.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because it's like, yeah, is it an EP or what? But like, it's that seven tracks. I think, like you said, it's about 16, 17 minutes. Overall, like smooth listen, pretty consistent sound. Like he keeps a consistent sound like throughout the album or EP. Like we're gonna have to figure this out now. But I'm just gonna call it an EP.
Let's call it album.
All right.
Call it an album.
All right, we'll call it an album.
When in doubt, always say project. You'll never be wrong.
Words of wisdom.
Fun game once again. All right. So on this project, yeah, super smooth and consistent, which I can appreciate. Definitely catchy, head bopping, chilling, listening. So yeah, I liked it overall.
I liked it overall as well. The song amount, the shortness of it was interesting because his past stuff he's done full length. I have a little bit of experience with him, so I was interested why he did it so short. I'm like, what the heck? But I loved it overall, and I liked that it was a breeze to listen to, both in the length and in, like Nick was saying about the beats, very simple but very, very smooth, and I liked them a lot. And his flows, the main thing why I really am drawn to him is because he doesn't seem like he's trying too hard, but also he's not lazy, because there's obviously a lot of complexity in what he's saying, or in the structure at least. Not so much in the content yet, but I know that, and there's bright spots here, and he's still very young. But overall, I really like this kid. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. So
how about you, B?
This was definitely my introduction to him. So I have not listened to his full-length projects. Don't know how those sound. You guys talk about the length and, you know, why might he go that way? And eventually we're going to be talking about what's popping. It's obviously the biggest song on the project. I would assume his biggest song overall. And I don't want to get into it too much right now. I almost felt like this was put out just to get that song more out there and to kind of capitalize on that hype, which is certainly understandable. But I also kind of felt like it suffered in some ways, which I'll again get into later. And then the production, which I thought was interesting. So when I was listening to it, obviously What's Poppin', biggest song again, produced by Jetson Made and Pooh Beats. Jetson Made blew up this year with Da Baby. He produced so many Da Baby songs. Suge is one of them. There's just tons of them. So that was like the biggest get, and you could tell like that production on that song, it just hits. And as I was kind of learning about Jack Harlow, I was looking at his producers, and you're right, those are kind of like indie producers that kind of came up with him. And I definitely appreciate that sound too. So to kind of get into it, I think we can talk about each song one by one. We'll skip What's Poppin' for now, end with that, and start off with Too Stylish. What do you guys think about this song? And I'll start with Jay this time.
Too Stylish, actually one that I didn't really like. I thought it was one of the, I mean, it's a very small album, one of the few songs that did seem lazy to me. It did seem a little, and it's still good quality. It's better than a lot of artists out there. But it was one that didn't stick to me. Like I will skip over it when I was listening and preparing for this pod. And it was a little too low key for me, and not too stylish. There's nothing new about it, nothing very very basic with it. But I can see how someone would like it just because it's a good flow and a good. He's very natural with his. You could tell it's a natural. It comes natural for him to flow and to vibe. So me personally, I didn't really like this one though.
I think the hook is catchy or whatnot, but it's kind of ironic. You say it's a little basic. The song's called Too Stylish. Like, if you're going to call it that, then you should probably bring it. And I don't know if he really did. So, Nick, what were you going to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, he's there. I mean, I got a few things on this. So, I mean, a lot of this album does have a very basic quality to it, like what I was talking about. I mean, you talk about the production on What's Poppin' versus a lot of these other ones I had specifically called out without looking at the production credits, that they had that kind of indie feel to them. They very much remind me of that, like, of beats that like I used to make, you know what I mean? They just have such that basic structure of like, you just got like some drums and like a little loop on them. And there's a couple songs on the album where the loop is sick and it's kind of drives the energy of the song. Some of the more bangers on the album, and this one had a little bit less of that. But one of the things that I noticed throughout this whole album is there's this theme on every single song. He mentions girls, hookups, talks about their boyfriends on a bunch of the songs, but also a lot of the point of that and the theme of the album is talking about how he's focusing on his career and not on women. He's saying like, I don't got time for that because I'm going on tour or because of this or that. And this is another song where he brings that up, you know, where there's these themes of women want him, but he's focused on his career. He's got a lyric that says, I've been staying focused, got me celibate. You know, he hasn't been sleeping with anybody because he's so focused on his career. And another theme kind of throughout this is a little bit of this kind of mistrust of people that he brings up in this album, talking about people when he's kind of coming up that aren't kind of growing and maturing with him. You see that on a couple of songs. And in this one, he talks about, you know, with girls, some of that mistrust and like, I can't tell if you about it is one thing. Them boys said on site, it's all lies, you know? So it's kind of this interesting juxtaposition he has throughout this whole album of like constantly talking about girls, but also talking about not getting into relationships with them, kind of mistrust of them not being worth his time. And that was kind of one of the big things I took away from this. This is one of the other big things is he's really good at making hooks and melodies. And I, like someone said earlier, this hook kind of has that dope feel to it, but the rest of it does have a little bit of that kind of lazy feel, even though he does naturally have this vibe and this groove that you can just tell he's born with, you know what I mean? So I'm excited to see this kid grow, to be honest with you.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, there's like kind of like themes that run throughout this project, and like Too Stylish kind of goes along with that. It's not one of the stronger songs in my opinion. I think maybe putting it right after What's Poppin' was a good choice, just because What's Poppin' starts the album off really strong, and then you kind of go into this, and it lets you kind of build up to maybe some better tracks that you see later on. Too Stylish, yeah, I got kind of bored with it, like kind of quick. You know, when I first heard it, I was like, all right, swag, like feeling himself, like for sure, like, you know, it's a good song for that. You know, kind of like confident, cocky, like, you know, some typical rap shit. But not one of the top tracks for me, that's for sure. But not bad by any means either. So just kind of like mediocre.
Yep. And the thing that I'm going to be talking about a lot is just the length of the songs. You know, not many of them are that long. What's Poppin' isn't that long either, but it feels like it has more substance. And I think it's because, you know, he really goes after it. And almost every other song on the project, it's a lot of like chorus, verse, maybe chorus again, and that's it. You know, and someone mentioned lazy, and I kind of feel that at a lot of times throughout this project of that's what it is. But you can tell that he has talent. it's obvious he has talent, and there's always at least one like very clever bar, throughout each song, no matter what. My favorite one on this one was "She Wants to Pound It." Said she want my kids, but they grounded. Like I laughed at that. They got a legitimate like laugh out of me. Like dude can be clever, but at the same time, I don't know, man. I just feel like either the ability to write a full song isn't quite there, or what. And Jay, I don't know. You'll have to kind of fill us in, because I haven't heard the full length, so I don't know if this is just a rush project to get capitalize on hype, or what.
The point you made about that, what you just said, to capitalize on what's popping. I don't know if that's actually what was happening, but that makes a lot of sense to me, because it is. When I think of this album, I think of that song. Like that's the one. It's synonymous, and it makes the whole album. Without it, it's much weaker. I think a lot of it has to do is his age, and there's some things in terms of his writing ability, because I know that even in just this album alone, with this sample size, you could tell there's complexity in the structure of flows. The and the content isn't terrible by any means, but it's almost like he's only 22 years old, and it's almost like, what fresh take can he have on life, or on, I mean, he has a unique perspective, everybody does, but I think as he gets older, he's gonna have some more complexity in the content. And I'm I I wish I could pick out one of the songs that I really like off his other albums is It's called Cody Banks, like that movie, that kids movie. But that's one of his best songs that he's made, and it is witty rhymes, witty structure, funny. He's really funny. He's really self-aware too. I think that's gonna go a long way. Similar to what I think Drake is very self-aware, and I think he's able to capitalize that on just knowing that he's going to get a lot of girls and a lot of attention from this, but he's almost operating on a level above that, where he can see everything happening. I just want to see, maybe I'm hoping with age, more complexity will come with his song writing specifically.
For sure. Do you know how old he is? I didn't.
22. I checked. Yeah, I checked right before. 22 years old. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Nick's mentioned it. You've kind of mentioned it, Jay, the kind of topic of women. So moving on to the next song, which is "I Want to See Some Ass," which is the second song on the project that got produced by Jetson Made. Although this beat, for me, nowhere near his other production, in my opinion. So I don't know. But what do you guys think about this song? I'll go to Jer first.
For sure. Yeah, I thought it was like, whoa, like I want to see some ass. Like, damn, like you know me, I'm like, keep it wholesome. Like, come on. No, it's just funny, like it's like there's gotta be like a more clever way to like get that point across. Like it's just so funny that he comes just like straight out, like I want to see some ass. Like shit, like he doesn't beat around the bush, like when it comes to what he's trying to say. So like I wish maybe like it could have been more clever, and I think that maybe sort of like my feelings on like a couple of the songs on the album, like maybe wish it was a little more clever. That being said, like I did like find myself like head bobbing to like a lot of it. Like I don't know, like that one part, it's funny, the song title itself is kind of the one thing that kind of like throws me like out of my groove, and it's like, oh, like he really just said that. But like yeah, I think overall I did enjoy the song. It's kind of funny, like there's like, this is like kind of like the beginning of like what Nick talked about, like him talking about hooking up, and like, you know, like later on there's that out front, like he's out front of like someone's house, like ready to pick him up. Like, you know, there's that underlying theme throughout these songs. I feel like this is like kind of the first one that kind of really goes into that. So it's kind of like a showing of what's to come, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I enjoyed it overall. Some of the bars go pretty hard. So.
Yeah, I just want to add this because we're talking about, the beat on this one, B, that you mentioned with the production, because um, this was one that I'd specifically noted as had one of those loops in it, that catchy loop that drives the song. So specifically what's popping in this song were the two that I specifically named. I, again, hadn't looked at the production credit, so I didn't know produced by the same guy. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, I think when you look at any album or project, you're only gonna find one or two songs that like truly stand above, like the way that What's Poppin' does. And it's funny we say we're not gonna, we're gonna save it for the end, but literally that's the ruler that the entire album is measured against. You know what I mean? Is because of just how it leads the album off. That's how it goes. But this was probably the next best song, sort of music wise, beat wise. You know what I mean? I mean, I think with some of like the lyrics and the content, you have some issues, and I got some, stuff about, again, I was talking about the beats. They're kind of basic. You mentioned on the last song, talking about this structure, chorus, verse, chorus, verse. I remember when I came up trying to make some music myself, I had already made the comment that this reminds me of some of the beats that I used to make. Even this one's a little bit, again, it's a higher production value, but that concept of, until you really learn your artistry and learn like how to play with stuff and make, like artistic and theatric decisions throughout an album. I think of someone like Travis Scott, who like, his albums are like there's so much more going on besides just the lyrics. You know what I mean? There's a lot of actual music happening even within the hip hop world. And when you're first really kind of learning to do stuff, that's why I'm so curious about what his other stuff kind of is all you know how to do is, okay, this is how I write a song. I do a verse, I do a hook, I do a verse. Maybe if I know a little bit about music, I do a bridge or something crazy like that. But otherwise, you just kind of repeat, and that's all you kind of got. And so you kind of get that structure. But at least this one, I think this is one of the better produced beats on the album, outside of the content of the song, which I have some stuff on too. But you can get back to your point too.
Sure. And we are not expecting like groundbreaking music here, right? Like chorus, verse, whatever is okay. But these verses are so short, and sometimes it feels, and this song isn't so bad, but there's others on the project where it's like, yo, that was like 90% chorus or whatever, like, and this song too, it's 2 minutes, so two verses there, and you're hitting your chorus a few times. So I don't know. That's kind of what it is for me.
Yeah,
Before I
just
get
going along with the themes on this album, though, this is one of the ones where I specifically noticed that theme of focusing on his career instead of women. He hints at that a lot, like he's not got time with, which is, there's a certain irony that he kind of intentionally sets up, I think, with the song. I think you do got to give the kid a little bit of credit. Like, he's got these certain flows. Like one thing, that I noticed about him is his ability to kind of play with his bars to make these rhymes. You're never going to get an episode of this podcast from me without talking about Eminem in some way, right? And one of the things that he always does is shifts his pronunciation or something, or his cadence in the way he pauses to make it rhyme with a different line. And not to give this kid any kind of like credence up to like with Eminem, but that's something that he's got good talent with doing, is tweaking the way he pauses or his cadence and the way he says things to make them rhyme. So even though there's not a lot of really solid content, compared to, again, some other artists, who really, it's like hard to, you read their lyrics and it's almost like reading a poem, right? Where it's hard to like follow along because it's so deep. He doesn't have that, but he's got this skill of rhyming and being clever, that I think he does here. He's got one kind of interesting line on this song, specifically, I Want to See Some Ass, where he talks about, I want to be something. And he's talking within the kind of context of a relationship, but at the same time, it's a really clever play on the fact that he's talking about his career and the way he wants to grow. He's saying, I want to be something. He's, so it's got that kind of like that two sides of the coin where like, I want to be something with you, but also I want to be something. And so I can't focus on relationships and shit like that. So he's got some little clever things like that in there, but his lyrics are pretty simple, but he's got that talent of rhyming and stuff too.
Dude, Nick thinking about the meaning of these lyrics more than Jack Harlow.
That brings up something funny. Genius was doing an interview with him where they're like breaking down his lyrics, and it was so funny. I was talking to my friend, or we were texting my friend Corey about it, and we're like, dude, what is there to break down about these lyrics? They're not complex, dude. But he has a good personality, so it's a likable interview. But the lyrics are so simple. It was like, why, huh? But this song, just my take on the song, I think the title took me out of it too. Maybe it's just my age, you know. But I think it's a good song overall. I think there's definitely an audience for it, of course. For me, I just couldn't get into it. I don't like that. It's fine if you're saying that in the song, and I know there's much worse lyrics out there, and much like, more vulgar or whatever, but I don't like it to be the title of the song and the hook, because it's just too in my face. But something you were saying, Nick, the way he pronunciates in the next song, I think number 3, Smells Like Incense. I don't know if you guys are ready to jump over that, but just
That's
the way
number
he said,
4.
oh, number 4. Okay. I don't know how, but just to support your point, Nick, the way he says the word significant, and he rhymes significant with tripping. He's like, she ain't that significant. I'm like,
I didn't even know that's what
like
word he
that,
was saying until I saw the lyrics. Like, I thought he was using some street slang or whatever, and I looked it up and I was like, oh, he's just saying. I thought you said like Slim Pickens or something like that. But yeah, but I like that. I like the way he does that. He does that throughout the album in a bunch of places. That it's cool. It shows you a level of artistry outside of his lyrics that it's gonna open big doors for him. Once he actually has something to say, he's gonna be able to do a lot with it, And it's funny hearing everybody talk about the vulgarness of the song and all that, because I'm usually on Jared's side of like, want stuff to be more wholesome, or like, where's your content? I don't like the sexuality and stuff like that. And I seem to be the only one who didn't really have a problem with this particular song, but it's because of some of the irony and stuff that I think that he was playing in there. I think this kid does get a little bit more credit for his lyrics. They're basic, but he's clever with them, So.
And go ahead, Jer. Sorry.
Sorry, it's actually me.
Sorry.
What I was gonna say about it is I agree with you guys. Like, sexuality in music is fine. I just hate when it's like so like the chorus or whatever. Just because like, if I'm gonna like blast your music, like I want to do that, but I'm not fucking 22. Like I don't want to be rolling down the street and blasting like I want to see some ass as like the chorus, dude. It's like
right.
Fuck,
there was a time in our lives when we would have done
sure,
that.
Sure.
We're not his. I guess we're not his target audience. He probably has tons of,
So then to kind of also talk about it, right? What I really found interesting about this track is like the last part of it, the second verse. He's going to a strip club, and he could have like it's a rap song, right? Like you can say whatever you want, you could flex as hard as you want, even if it isn't really true. But it wasn't really like that, right? Like it wasn't like he had all these strippers on him as soon as he walked in the club. It was kind of like not fully confident. Like he's talking to this girl and he's not like, yo, you're going to get with me. It's kind of like, hey, hit me up if you do, and he's talking about pulling money out of the ATM, but he's going to save some, So I thought that was unique. I thought that was like the uniqueness in his content is it wasn't just a straight up hip hop song about going to a strip club. It was him and how he would do it. So I thought that was interesting too. And there's some clever bars in there too. So I don't know. That was my take on it.
He talks about paying bills at one point in this. Like, this is going to be a guy that as he comes out, he has got some swag and some bragging that he does throughout this album about how far he's come or whatever, the fact that he's going on tour and stuff like that. This kid's going to change his tune the way that everybody does once they come up and start bragging about the money that he's made. But there's at one point where he's making a reference about having to pay bills and like how something's already too expensive and he's already got like the gas bills to pay or something like that. So it's kind of funny that you hear, you think of the trajectory of like an artist and like, someone like Drake talking about how much money he's made. And then this guy's talking about like, oh, I go to the strip club, but I save money. And like, I got a gas bill to pay and stuff like that. Like people's lives change a lot when they succeed in hip hop versus when they first come up, for sure. So
there's some relatability like throughout the album for sure, like you're talking about. And that makes it more like listenable for me, definitely.
Yeah, I think my like the artist that I started to most kind of connect him with was Mac Miller. Mac Miller definitely came up from the underground too, from the indies or whatever. And Mac always had his own voice, right? Like he wasn't always talking about like, he wasn't always flexing or anything like that. Like he always kind of knew what he was about and it was genuine and you just believe it, you know, and whatever he was spitting, you were on board with it. And I think Jack is finding his voice, and I just don't know if it's all the way there yet, in my opinion. All right, well, let's move on to the next song, which is Smells Like Incense. And this was actually one of my more favorite tracks throughout the album. Like, he had clever bars. There was a very vibey beat, and he really made it. And I thought this was one of the most developed songs on the album. You guys mentioned that significant like twist on the lyric. I hated it at first. I fucking hated
Mm-hmm.
it. And I learned to kind of like it. It ended up being swaggy, but at first I didn't like it. What were you guys' thoughts on this one? And Jay, we'll start with you.
Agree. One of my favorite songs on the entire thing. I like that's a part of the hook, I believe, the significant line.
Yep.
Yeah, he also says some interesting things on the hook in that same like rhyme scheme. He says, "Used to have a gimmick, now I got the big wig spinning." Like, used to have a gimmick. What do you mean by, like, you used to have like something that was more corny when you were first coming up, or what? That's kind of how I took it when I was listening. I don't know exactly what he means, but I loved it, and I loved his structure of that hook. And that's one of the ones where the hook alone and maybe the beat of the song had me already. So, and I thought he did good on the verses though too. So it was one of my favorite songs on the album.
Yeah, I was
Jared, what do
feeling
you
this
think, man?
song. Yeah, my bad, dude. Did I interrupt someone?
Oh, I just said, Jared, what do you think, man?
Oh, dog, we're on the same page, my guy. Yeah, I know for sure. Just like B and J said already, like, dude, definitely one of my favorite tracks on the album for sure. It's just like I like how he said slim, thick with it. I just love that term for some reason. Like, I don't know why. I was like stoked that he used it. Like the rhyme scheme was cool. Like dim-witted, slim, thick-witted, imprint, hit it, interesting. It was just like, I don't know, like it's just super catchy, and I don't know, fuck, it just went kind of hard, and like it's just like kind of like it's more of like I don't know, it's more of like a story, like kind of like going to a chick's house, or like kind of like bribing a girl that he's going after, or what have you. And he talks later on in the song about, she's a psych major, she's a sophomore. It's just like I'm like invested in like this person. Like it's just like kind of like, got it hooked me, it got my interest. I'm just like a really big fan of it.
Yeah, this was one that I thought helped make the project as a whole. I think this proved a lot for Jack. One of the things I've been saying throughout this is that he's good at making melodic hooks. This was one of the best ones. He's good at picking rhyme schemes and working within those rhyme schemes. And again, that comes down to the way he changes his cadence and his enunciation, and he can fit something. Once he picks a cool melody and a vibe, he can stick to it and say whatever he wants. He was able to tell a story through this and stick in that cool rhyme scheme. And I think he does that on every single song in this album. He picks kind of a vibe, a melody with the hook. He's able to use the melody of the hook and make the verses, to craft the verses to kind of match that melody, so that the hooks and the verses always go together. They very much feel like a cohesive part of that particular song. And he does something different on every single song. I mean, there's only 7 songs, but he does something different on every single song, at least to a certain degree. He changes up the way he flows, the way he spits. He changes up those melodies. But he also still has a signature style in the way that he does that brings the project together as a cohesive whole. I think you could tell if you heard any one of these that they are part of the same project within that kind of time frame in his life or whatever. You can say that maybe he rushed it or whatever, but I also feel like they are cohesive together, that they match. And this song being kind of in the middle of the album here, I think it pulls both ends of it together, because if you get a little tired on Too Stylish after What's Poppin', you get it brought up or taken down with I Want to See Some Ass, maybe, but this song brings it back. And also, I think the song, the album ends a little bit weak there on the end with that Once May Comes or whatever song. So this is a nice kind of peak, a little hump day kind of thing in the middle that sort of pulls it together and really shows you that he knows how to take a specific song, make a melody, build an entire song around it, and then it can still have that be related to the songs that are also surrounded by it on a project. So for me, you know, it is a perfect example of what he's kind of best at. And again, he goes in with that career over women thing on this theme. Again, I said it was on every single song, and here it is too. He says, I told her we should talk more, but I'm about to go on tour. You know, so again, he even likes this girl and he wants to be with her, but he's got his career to focus on. So I think that's kind of an interesting kind of, you know, theme that he again brings in actually a really good song.
Sure. To kind of go back to that women theme, the honest take for me, which I thought was, you know, kind of interesting. So, you know, again, he's talking about utilities and things they has to pay, trying to do the right thing, but I bluffed already, trying to take it slow, but I cuffed already. So, you know, usually like cuffing when it comes to like when you hear that in hip hop, it's about like you don't want to do that. Like the girl is trying to like attach herself to you or whatever. And like the hip hop rappers don't like that. But he's talking about it like he cuffed on this girl, like he's really into this girl, like he already fell for her. And I thought that was like a really honest take too, that you don't hear a lot. But then there's like some of these like awkward, and they usually again revolve around sexuality, where he's like, I don't jerk it when I'm finna get some. And on the last song, it was like pre-cum off the liquor. It's like, bro, like I don't need that shit. You keep that shit to yourself.
Yeah.
It's an honest take, but one that you can keep to yourself.
Is that on this track?
Yeah. The I don't jerk it when I'm finna get some. But then he ends it with
Yeah,
but then he ends it with, but I don't
that
let the
line's
kids
pretty
live
tough.
long, which is funny, you know? So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. It's a mixed bag for me.
He's got jokes in it, but again, you can tell he's young. You know what I mean? Like there's times to make those jokes. There's times to poke fun at yourself too. That's like a weird flex. Like, you know, I don't jerk it before I do something, because then he goes on to say after that about how that allows him to finish strong, or
Right.
he's in the middle of finishing strong or whatever. But yeah, it's like a little too personal, kind of like very young, like, you know, again, maybe we're not the audience for it kind of thing, but I don't want to talk about pre-cum and jerking off in that sense, at least, you know, be a little bit more clever with it. But he does, to B's point, he does have a good joke there kind of at the end of it. So it's like, it's a mixed bag.
And to be totally fair, like this is not the only artist that does it, you know? Like Young Thug sends some very fucking weird things all the time, and I usually forgive him for it as long as it's not part of a chorus, you know? So I don't know. I don't know what it is about this, and maybe I'm being too hard on him. But Jay, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to further analyze that line, dude. No, I was just thinking, like, dude, like I was thinking about American Pie. I feel like they, like, one of the dad, like Eugene Levy, like tells like Jason Biggs, like, you never like go on a date with a loaded gun or some shit like that. That could have been any number of movies, but I'm pretty sure it came from that. And
something about Mary too. They talk about.
Yeah, something about
exactly.
something about Mary.
So I think it's kind of funny because that's like kind of like traditional knowledge. Is that like, hey, maybe like you don't like, you know, go into this situation like fully loaded, and then it's like, it's kind of funny. He's like, yo, I go fully loaded, and like, you know, it works out for me. Like, I don't know, I thought that was kind of the flex, like, for sure.
Me too. Yeah, but, I have the same feelings as you guys too. I mean, kind of a mixed bag on these types of lines that he's saying, and I don't really know why. Maybe it's because he's young, and I'm like, it's weird for me to hear him saying it. Like if it comes from someone else, it feels less noticeable, maybe, or something. But at the end of the day, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, that is funny though. That is, and that's pretty. Like if somebody else were to say that, would I have the same reaction? So it's interesting.
I hear that. All right, well, let's move on to the next song. I think we already kind of brought it up once. It's called Out Front, and I'll just get kind of my thoughts in on this out of the way. I wasn't feeling this one. I really thought it was kind of like a throwaway track. Maybe it's vibey. Maybe it kind of fits into the cohesion, you know. There is a little bit of introspective thing here. Again, this is very much about women. The only part that I really did enjoy, so he, again, I think we had mentioned it, he's outside of some girl's house. The one part that I did like, he talks about he's, you know, driving on a road trip or whatnot. Maybe I've been going about it all wrong. sometimes I just need someone to call on what I'm going to do when they all gone. So he's really kind of putting the onus of himself. Am I the one fucking up my relationships? Am I the problem here? But the rest of the song is not about that. So it kind of got lost in theme. It was like, that's the one thing that I really kind of stood out to me. But the rest of the song, even maybe even the theme doesn't fit that. I don't know what you guys thought about this one.
I was the one who brought it up earlier. Um, just thought it kind of like fit well, like in the middle of the album with like "Smells Like Incense" and then the "I Want to See Some Ass," kind of just like all on the same lines. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of dug the chorus on this one. No, you've been waiting on me. I'm out front. I know you sick of playing these games. I'm about done. I thought that was kind of catchy. I kind of felt that. And then it goes into like that stuff that Nick was talking about, like talking about your like, your boyfriend ain't shit and stuff like that. And like, I don't know. I don't really vibe with that too much. Like, I don't know. I just think it's like unnecessary. And other than that, though, like I don't know, the idea of being out front, like yo, I'm ready to go, let's do this. Like I kind of dig that, and I was kind of feeling that. So like yo, what's up? I'm here. Let's do this. Like I kind of felt that as far as like kind of swag, like talking about getting chicks and stuff like that. So I'll give him that. It wasn't like I don't know. It was kind of there's only 7 songs on this project, right? But like I think it kind of falls like somewhere in the middle for me, like maybe towards the top. I don't know, just because it's kind of catchy. But what do you guys? I'll pass it off.
Yeah, I think again, this kind of falls in that he makes a good melodic hook. You know what I mean? It's got a little catchiness to it. Overall, there's not a ton of great content with it. He keeps with some of the kind of themes. I'm with you, Jared. I hate lines about like boyfriends and cheating and stuff like that. Like maybe that says something about my past or whatever, but like it's like, you know what I mean? Like I'm just not down with the concept of like bragging about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? I think there's other ways that you can kind of flex without talking about stealing people's girls. You know what I mean? This is it's for B called it a throwaway song. I mean, I have notes on every single song on this album except for that song. I literally don't have any notes on it. I don't even have it written down in like the track list. You know what I mean? But I do remember, from listening to the album, it's got that kind of catchy thing. He builds a song around it. It still stays with what I was saying is that it sounds like it's part of the project. It's got that kind of vibe. He created that melody. It is one of the most basic kind of tracks on here that again reminds me of when I was making stuff like in my closet or whatever, just with obviously like a nicer producer and better sound quality than what I was making. But it's just not. It's not any kind of like amazing, mind-blowing track, but it very much fits within the album. It doesn't feel out of place. I think he does what he has done well on the album. It's just not his best kind of attempt at what he's done well on other songs like What's Poppin', which I'm excited that we're going to be talking about here in just a second.
I agree with you guys' takes on this one. I think is if you compare it though to like the majority of rappers out there, I think it's on par, but it's kind of for his comparing to like What's Poppin' or Smells Like Incense, it's lower, it's more basic, but it's not bad. It's mediocre, like Jared said. And I think, but to Nick's point, it fits in with the album, and it does something for the album. I think the album has a good like ebbs and flows. I think there's high points and then there's valleys, but the valleys are kind of like almost a mood switch up to prep you for the next for the next drop almost. And then and when you get to those drops, if you listen to the whole thing as a comprehensive project, I think it helps with it. So it's just mediocre for me. Forgettable for me too, though. Like I didn't write it down either. I completely forgot about it. To be honest, it wasn't one that stood out to me. But you still, if this was the first song, someone never heard Jack Harlow, they come in and they listen to this song first, they'd probably be, oh, this guy's good. This guy's good. They might not remember it. They might not be blown away, but they would, they'd be like, you could tell he's got skill, but mediocre compared to the rest or to his high points.
What's interesting to me is like this is like almost the longest song on the album. It's almost 3 minutes, and yet it's like the least memorable. And I think that's interesting. The other thing I was thinking about as we were talking about this, What's Poppin' is obviously the best song, and Jay mentioned being he sounds on par with maybe other rappers, and I'm wondering if the difference is the beats. Like if he had really hot producers behind him, would we be saying the same things about some of these songs that don't have a lot of content? I still think there'd be a little bit to be desired, but maybe it'd be somewhat of a lift where we'd have a lot less criticism of this project. I don't know.
That's an interesting point, and I think there's something to that, to be honest. And maybe it's a good thing that he put this out, maybe with some to get What's Poppin' more on the map. We don't know if that's was the reason why, but I'm kind of glad he did, because hopefully it leads to working with top tier producers, so we can see what he can do with like a full album with some of these top level guys. And it's almost like this was like his entrance into maybe the mainstream a little bit more. Maybe not fully there yet. I don't know yet. I don't know the what the temperature is on the culture with him, but it seems like he's getting more mainstream.
Yeah, I think to that point too, it has to do not just with the production quality, but with the song structure. We've talked about it multiple times, the basic song structure. And I think that's something that maybe a top tier producer will bring to you, is bringing in these intros, these bridges, these things that you maybe don't think about if you're just a lyricist, if you just spit bars and stuff. You don't know how to necessarily structure a full, theatric is the word I used earlier, kind of song. And I think to Jay's point earlier, a lot of rappers do 90% of their tracks are throwaway tracks. Most of these albums come out and there's one or two tracks that are good, and the rest of them, you could not name a song on that album aside from the single. And I think that he is on par with that as far as his skill and his ability. I think that he doesn't have the experience and the content to add to that. And I think that he doesn't have he's not a musician, I don't think, in the way that certain guys that are out there can be. Like we were talking about Young Boy Never Broke Again recently. He's a musician. I can almost guarantee you that fool can play the guitar. And that makes a difference in the way that you make your song structure outside of just your production quality, but poor Jer here got cut off twice. So
and I'm gonna let you finish, Jer. Just kidding. Go ahead.
You gonna let me finish? But what?
Just go ahead.
For this dumbass point I'm about to make too. I was just saying he missed a golden opportunity. I feel like, he could have like gone from I want to see some ass to like I'm out front, and then it's like to like I'm in her room and it smells like incense in it. So I don't know. I kind of felt like he like kind of missed like an opportunity for some like good flow there as far as
You're trying to make this into a concept album, and I love it.
That's what B's all about. He wants that narrative arc. But no, that's actually a good point though, Jared, because I think that, to my point with the incense smells like incense song, is that it does bring up a peak in the middle of the album where it does it dips, rises and dips again. Unfortunately, I think the way that it ends with Once May Comes is it ends on a low note. You know what I mean? And I think maybe there's a way that you structure that where maybe you go more of a rise before you kind of taper off. Although most albums, I think the best albums end on a really strong note, maybe not the strongest, but a strong note. That's a good way to kind of leave them wanting more, leave them remembering the album. But I think there is a way when you have an album like this that has so many similarities between the songs. I said earlier, I mean, every song sounds different, but he has a similar way of creating a song. And so you can take the approach of let's peak in the middle. We dipped so hard for 2 songs, let's bring it back. But you can also take, to your point, like he's a clever guy. You know what I mean? You could take and make actually a narrative like that where you're talking about, I want to see a girl, like I'm out front. Now I'm in the room. And then once May comes, kind of talking about end of summer, like when summer starts or, whatever the deal is, like you can make a cool narrative there that with it being such a small project and so many of these songs being similar enough and cohesive enough that the order of them doesn't really matter. But the way that he ordered it ends it on a low note when he might have actually been able to add a little bit of a narrative to the structure of the album. Because for all I know, and I had this thought, he might have been talking about the same girl in a couple of these different songs. Now he talks about a lot of girls that are coming up. For all we know, though, this girl who he's out front or whose room smells like incense might have been that stripper that he fell in love with, you know, that he asked to hit him up later. Like you can play with kind of themes like that. And, you know, I think that's something too that comes with maturity. The more you think about like, how do I put, you know, B's favorite thing, put a narrative arc on this whole thing. You know, if he's going to talk about women in every single song, maybe there's a way to put a narrative, you know, there to that and connect the different women that you're talking about.
Yeah, it does seem kind of silly to even talk about or mention, but track order does have like some importance, especially when you're listening to a project from front to back. Like, yo, that track order like can make a difference. So
Totally agree with you guys. The next song on the album, I think, just it's one of my. I think it might be like either my second or third favorite incense. And this one, I'm not sure which would take second or third. Obviously, short too. I think it's 2 minutes, and no chorus for what I noted, just straight bars. And I don't know. I mean, what's popping is pretty much just bars with a chorus, maybe on the front and the end. But this did it for me. I feel like he can't do that on every single song, obviously, but when he goes for it, he really goes for it, and I enjoyed this one a lot. The beat wasn't incredible by any means, but it was exactly what he needed. It hit hard. He wrote it just like he did on What's Poppin', and yeah, I think it really worked for me. What did you guys think about it? I'll start with Jay.
Wait, were you talking about Out Front or are you talking about Once May Comes?
Hey Big Head, sorry. It's the next
Hey,
song
Big
on the album.
Oh. That's
No, yeah, I
okay,
was following.
I got you. I don't got the full track list. My bad.
Wait to make fun of the last track because it's coming up next.
Yeah, the top 3 song for me too. The beat was not. The beat was. I like the beat because it was a different. It hit me off the bat. It comes in hard. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's like he goes into. I think goes straight into bars. I don't know if it starts.
Yeah. He does.
Did it not have a hook? Yeah.
I don't think.
And top 3 song because I was. It was a perfect timing for that, for something hard, something similar to What's Poppin'. Not necessarily similar, but something that had me gave me a feeling of like, okay, I like this. I could play this like at the gym or something. You know, I could play this basketball or something like that. So I was definitely, and I on my my notes, all I put was beat hard. The beat's hard. But like you said, I don't know the producer, but it wasn't anything crazy. It was just hard. So I liked it. That was my thoughts on that one. Top 3 song.
this track got real, like lyrically, like it starts off like I was listening to this like around my coworkers, and it got really uncomfortable like really quick. Because I work with a lot of females, and it says she want to fuck you one-on-one. We might run that train instead. And I was like, fuck.
Wait. But keep going. Because then the next 2 bars are me and my friend just like twins, same nut sack and the same dick head, and there's an ad lib of what the fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's that self-awareness, dude. Like when you ad lib what the fuck, you're like, yeah, I'm throwing out these lyrics because like
sure,
they put you they put you in check. Like other shit like that, like hotel got your bitches checked in, like and then he talks about pussy juice breakfast, like damn, like yo, this is like, it gets your attention though, and I think that's like that can make a good song, something that really grabs your attention. Like for me, I can't listen to that around anyone I know, except you guys, of course. But like, fuck, like B was talking about earlier, it's straight bars, and I can fuck with that. Anytime that happens, I can respect that in an artist just going hard for the whole track. Yeah, so solid.
Yeah, I mean, this is one where, you talk about the lyrical content, some of those jokes and stuff that are in there, man. That ad lib, the what the fuck. I mean, again, it reminds me of times when Eminem would make some crazy, outrageous statements, and he would call himself out in his own ad libs and stuff like that. You know what I mean? That concept of recognizing that you're doing like a persona or kind of like a over the top intentional kind of thing. But I took issue to a certain degree with this lack of content, because if you're gonna go all bars, right? Like, I've been giving this kid credit for, like, he creates these melodies and he does this and he brings these cohesive things together to kind of craft a song, even if it is at the most basic template kind of level of a song. I was excited to see him just go in on bars. This is a song where he plays with his rhymes and his enunciations and his cadence to make those rhymes. Again, it shows a lot of skill for the future. I don't think that it shows a lot of content. He has nothing to say. Like, dude, I don't know that you ever need in a song to say pussy juice. You know what I mean? I just don't know where you're at in your life or your situation where that's the best content you have to come up with. You know what I
Pussy
mean?
juice with his eggs, though.
Breakfast?
Right, exactly,
breakfast.
exactly. So all right, so he wants to talk about how he's like waking up with a girl and doing stuff. I don't know. It's just like, it feels like very much like, and also a little bit of a departure from a lot of the other album where, yeah, that might fall in line with like the I want to see some ass, but this concept of I'm too busy with my career to focus on this, to now I'm waking up next to girls and I'm eating them out for breakfast. You know what I mean? It's like this, like, he had this opportunity here to actually say something, and instead he decided to go so hard in on jokes and so over the top with it that he needed an ad lib that called himself out and said, what the fuck, for what he's saying. You know what I mean? So I felt like this was a missed opportunity. I love the concept of going in here for just bars for this song. I forget whether or not it had any kind of semblance of a hook. You guys say no, so I'll just trust you on that. But like, this concept of like going bars, proving your skill, having something to say, this is your platform, and he fucking had nothing to say, you know? And so, other than a couple of like immature jokes. And so that was a little bit of a bummer for me on that. Again, it was dope. He had some cool flows and rhymes, but I just wish he had something to say.
Yeah, it's funny that I had a problem with I want to see some ass, but I didn't have no problem with the song.
Yeah, what the fuck, Jay?
That's how and I am. But I guess it's because it mixed in well with the it wasn't as notable or
Right,
noticeable for
right.
me
It's a little more
because he's
subtle.
doing bars, you know, and the other one's
Yeah,
just the title of the song and it's the hook. But I did
that's
notice
exactly it.
the breakfast part. I did notice that, but it didn't take me out. I gave it to him on this one, and I was all in. But it's funny that I was making a big issue about that. And in general, Jack Harlow is much tamer than like a lot of artists that I personally like. That Eminem being one, but I don't know. Maybe I've grown into an old head, but I think it works sometimes and it works other times, or it doesn't work other times.
I think
It's
if you
mostly mellow, and I think it can go undetected for the most part. But we're sitting here analyzing lyrics and like, analyzing the album, so it's gonna come up. But yeah, I agree with you 100%, Jay. Like, he is, it's pretty smooth and mellow, and it's pretty tame compared to maybe some of like the more in your face rap that is also out there.
I think if you make it a bar, it's one thing. If you make it a chorus, it's so noticeable, you know? So I think that has something to do with it too. Okay, well, we have the second to last song to talk about. It's the last song on the album. I honestly don't want to spend that much time on this because it's really not worth it at all. There's supposedly 2 verses on this one, but this is the laziest song on the album. It's verse, chorus, second verse, which is a repeat of the first verse, and then the chorus twice. Like, dude was just trying to fill content, and I don't think there's another way to spin that.
Yeah, I can say from like, having written stuff in the past that when you write something that you like, sometimes you can feel like that'll stand on its own to a certain degree. But I don't feel like this was strong enough to do that. I'll give him again, as I have on every single song. He creates a cool melody with that hook. It's a cool little vibey melody, but outside of that, he just repeats. And the thing is that the verse isn't that good. The hook isn't that good as far as lyrics. There's not that much content. You just very much get this just like, hey, I wrote 2 things and I'm going to sing them twice each and I'm going to call it a song. And yeah, I was really disappointed in it. And I thought it was a pretty rough way to end an album that otherwise had some nice bright spots in it.
And I love you guys, but there's zero chance you have anything else to say about the song that we haven't already said.
That's spot on, B. I got nothing else.
All right, I there's no way. So let's just bring it home. Let's bring it home strong. And the way he starts this album, he starts it off strong. So it's finally time to talk about what's popping, which is incredible.
Ooh.
I mean, oof, it really is.
Brand new whip just hopped in.
I mean, the beat is the fucking piano, dude. You guys know me. I love a piano loop. Straight start with a chorus, and this is the way to do it, dude. Well, you have a catchy chorus, and you can go all bars for the rest of it and end with a catchy chorus. That's a fucking like sandwich, and I'll fucking eat that shit up all day. You know, and there's clever lyrics throughout the whole thing. So many references. It's like, damn, dude. I mean, obviously you can't, lightning doesn't strike twice. You can't just repeat this formula and serve it up to people, but there's something here. This is a hot song. And Jay, I know that this was your pick for this, for what we discussed. So let's hit it off.
Yeah. Oh, dude, he's firing at all cylinders with this one. It's so I love one of the things I noticed was I love when they do sports references, and he has a lot of sports references, like in the gym working on my free throw. And let's see, I can't think of any others, but
The John Stockton reference in
John
there.
Stockton. That's dope.
Sports Center top 10.
Sports that are top 10 on the hook.
Yeah.
But his flow is nice on this. The beat is nice. It's just pretty clear to see that this is, I'd say it's up there with it. I'm not a Jack Harlow like stan by any means, or not like super knowledgeable about his whole history, but this has got to be like the top 3 songs for him, in my opinion, from what I've heard, I guess. And I don't know if I have anything like interesting else to say about it. Just that is dope as fuck, dude. What did you guys think about it?
Yeah. So go ahead, Jer.
I'll just say, like, I appreciate that he shouts out the West Coast. On the West Coast, yeah, I'm talking about pre-rolls. I dig that. I dig that. And he says, me and my amigos got that free smoke right before. Kind of, I don't know if it's like, that's not really like a shout out to Migos or anything, but I think it was kind of clever the way he used that to just talk about like his homies. Yeah, this, I mean, just like you guys were saying, like super good song, super catchy. I mean, remember the first time I heard it, it was just like super stoked on it. And then this is like the reason I was so excited to review this album, like, because I'd heard this song and then Jay was like, yo, let's listen to the whole album, check it out. Yeah, and there's a reason that this is like the most popular song, and maybe the rest of the album, like, it couldn't like maybe like live up to this song. I mean, how could it? Because it's just so good. So I give him all the credit in the world for putting out this amazing track. And I don't want to like preemptively like this track for sure is definitely gonna like stay in rotation for like the whole summer. Like I'll be like, this is like a really good track. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, this song was my introduction to Jack Harlow because we had been tossing around albums and stuff like that. We had to kind of vote on what we were going to be talking about. And so I peeked in a little bit on every album that we were kind of talking about. So when you peek in on an album and this is the first song that comes up, you go, oh shit, I like Jack Harlow. I want to listen to this album. I want to review this album. And so that got me on board like right away, right from the beginning. You know what I mean? It's everything we've been talking about throughout this episode, right? I mean, we've got like great beats, we've got the melodic hook, we've got sick bars, we've got cleverness, we got everything that has made, from my very small experience with Harlow, made me respect him and made it feel good. And again, I said earlier, this had become kind of like the ruler that we had to measure the rest of the album against, which is a bummer for the other 6 songs. but at the same time, like, applause to him for putting together such a dope song, because this is the kind of thing that careers can kind of be built off of. You hope this doesn't become kind of a one-hit wonder. This is far and away I was looking on Spotify. I mean, this has well over 1 million views versus his next nearest one's got like 200,000 or 300,000 or something like that. I mean, this is easily, even though it's his most recent project, it's his most popular song, you know. And, you know, to try and go outside a little bit of the kind of just like, no, it's dope, it vibes, it's whatever, you know, it sets up a lot of the themes of the album. You know, he talks a little bit throughout it about, he's bragging about his swag, but he's also talking about his kind of come up, his struggle, the fact that he's focusing on his craft, his career, his personal growth. You know, he also, one thing I thought was kind of interesting that I wish he had talked about more throughout the album is kind of his disappointment in the people around him who aren't growing and maturing with him. He talks so much about how, you know, how he's grown, and it starts, you know, there's a couple themes throughout the song, the album or the project about his mistrust of other people and stuff like that. He kind of introduces that here, not knowing necessarily who to trust, and the people that came up with him or that were around him, they're not growing at his same level, you know. And one of my favorite lines from the album is, I'm getting real sick of taking advice from people that never could stare at reflections. And I love that concept of like, you can't even look at yourself in the mirror or look at, you know, evaluate yourself or judge yourself. And you want to give me advice on what I'm doing with my career, my life, my relationships, you know. So there's a lot of real talk in this album on top of all the jokes and the cleverness. And that's why a lot of the songs that really valied out on this album bummed me out, because you could see that he can actually bring jokes and bars and rhymes and cadence and melodies and everything into one song, plus have it be produced by, you know, what's turned out on this album to be a pretty good producer. And then to not have that on every kind of song afterwards is a little bit of a disappointment, but he really brings it on all fronts. And to B's point earlier too, it's not that template structure of first chorus. Now he doesn't spice it up so much that's like mind blowing, but you know, when you change it up, you know what your strength of the song is and you play with it. It gives you a lot of great opportunities to, you know, to show your artistry outside of just being like, I know how to write and spit and that's it, you know. So loved it for a lot of different levels, but I think there's some deep, you know, things to it too, themes that introduce for the whole album and shit like that too.
Yeah, before we go to In Rotation, you guys have called out definitely some of my favorite bars on this track. Again, the stare at reflections line, that was one of the ones that really stuck with me, you know, was being introspective. And we see some glimpses of that on the album. And the Migos Free Smoke, you know, I thought that was really clever, you know, Free Smoke. And Drake has a song called Free Smoke. So I'm sure Jay kind of like saw that. You know, Free Smoke is like, you know, if you guys want it, you can get it, you know, like you come at me, I'm gonna put you down type of thing. And then he kind of twist it about West Coast and, you know, talking about pre-rolls where, you know, when you're in the smoke shop and they have like a fucking deal, you get pre-rolls as like your kind of like free swag from taking something that you bought. So I thought it was like super clever smoke on like, or sorry, a clever twist on a very like, you know, I guess you'd say, built-in hip-hop like Free Smoke reference, right? You're talking about like, you know, going after someone, and he turns it into something like completely different. That was one of the most clever moments on the album for me.
Yo, were those lyrics highlighted on your notes, bro? I didn't mean to like call out both of those.
You know
lyrics.
what? You know what? They might have been. I don't know how you would know that.
Okay. Yeah.
And the last one that I highlighted, as Jeremy would know, was got my own flow, and I'm thinking about getting a patent or something like that. Like,
oh yeah,
that was super
great
clever.
line. Yeah.
You know, that reminds me though, Jay made a comment earlier about the gimmick. He makes the line about the gimmick, and he talks about now he's got like, what is it, big spenders or I forget exactly how it works out.
Big wigs, yeah.
Big wig spending, right? So he's talking about how he came up and he had whatever the gimmick was. And I don't know enough of his old stuff to kind of know about the you know, what that gimmick was, but now he's got people. That's what happens when you make it, when you break in, you now have people, big wigs, spending money on you. You know what I mean? So he kind of goes from talking about how he's got a gimmick, whatever that was, to now he's got this own flow that's patented, which I think is a thing that, you know, that I've kind of been highlighting throughout this album, the way that he does make these melodies, and he can take a song and make it his own and pick a lane and really stick to it through the song. And now he's got people spending money on him. So I you know, there's a little bit of that kind of career arc, which with a lot of the theme of the album being career, you know, and that he's focused on his career, I think is kind of an interesting little, you know, little mini narrative for Brandon there.
Thank you. I need it. You know, I need it. Not to reference our last episode, but I need it.
I think it fits in like really well with the album, like as far as like it has like that sort of crude lyric that like makes you go, oh, like he goes like, she said babe it's a hurt when I deep throat, and he goes like, it's one of those ones where you're like, fuck, dude, like shit, I can't be listening to this around like
yeah. And guess what, that was the line they were breaking down in the Genius interview.
Really? Oh shit, I need to listen to that.
Did he have anything good to say about it? Because that was one of my least favorite lines of the album on such a dope song. Like
I didn't get the line really. He says she asked him if it hurts, or I don't know.
I don't know. It was a little bit of a role reversal. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't break it down right now.
No.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't break it
down.
We
don't gotta go into it. We
too
can
deep
full on
into
just
it.
cut this, and we can just cut this. No, Nick.
Hey, Genius was willing to do a whole interview about that line specifically.
They didn't have a lot to work with.
Okay, so I think my point was before we seriously though, I was just like gonna say like the song, it has like that sort of like that controversial almost like content that makes you go ooh, and like, you know, that like makes it, I mean, every like song on this project, you know, has an E next to it, explicit, like you're gonna have to like beep shit out if you want to play this on the you know, like it's all got that, and it all, you know, this song also has those elements of the ego. You know, it's just like he does it, it's just like, you know, like Nick was saying, like it like sets like, you know, it sets the groundwork for some themes that, you know, end up like persisting throughout the entire project, which is cool. It's just done so much better like on this track, and it, you know, so it fits on the album, but it's just like significantly better than most of the other records on it. So
all right.
One last thing. Can I say one? Well, it's not really a huge thing, but the way he delivers, and maybe this is something that he grew into, like past his gimmick, and now he feels comfortable in. I feel comfortable that he feels comfortable in who he is, and it shows through his music. He knows who he is as an artist, and it's almost sometimes the way he delivers it to me is like he's talking to me, which is, as we have talked about on this podcast, it's a blessing and a curse, because sometimes it's almost too late. It sounds too lazy, and then sometimes it's like what's popping, where it's like it's effortless for him, but it hits me really hard. So that's one of my favorite things about him, and I hope he can. It goes more of the pop, the makes him stronger, and it doesn't go the lazy route, you know. But just threw that in there as we get into this last big question here.
That's right. The big question is coming up. Are you guys going to keep this in your rotation? And we'll go to Nick first.
Yeah, so a lot to like about Jack. A lot that I'm looking forward to from his future. I think that's one of the big takeaways I have from this project, is that I'm looking to see some maturity and some growth come out of him. I'm looking to see him pick up some content and figure out what he wants to talk about, what he wants to do with his platform. So he's definitely made a fan for someone who's looking for the future from him. You know, he's a young guy. He's going to hopefully make a lot of projects in the future. So I'm looking forward to those. What's Poppin' has already been added to some playlists. So I will definitely be hearing that song. You know, and I think I'll kind of reminisce on the Smells Like Incense. And I think outside of those two songs, there's not a lot I'm going to take away. It's very much built a lot of respect and credibility for Jack, I think, in this. But for me, the album as a whole, I won't be keeping in rotation, but What's Poppin' in particular, I'll be listening to, I think, for years to come.
Dope. Okay, let's go to Jer.
All right. Yeah. Like I enjoyed the project. Might keep it in rotation and just maybe after Hey Big Head, I might just go ahead and skip to the next album or something. We don't have to listen to Once May Comes.
Definitely
Um,
skippable.
yeah, so like I'll keep it in rotation.
Yeah, it's a
And then
6-track album.
I'll keep it for 6 tracks in rotation.
Dope. Okay, Jay.
Man, I was going back and forth on this if I was
Mm.
going to keep it in rotation or not. And I was the one that recommended this one. Not fully have when I recommended it, I hadn't fully listened to this album specifically, so it was cool to deep dive into it. But I think I got to stay true to the whole album format. So I'm not going to listen to the whole album in rotation. But like you guys are saying, these guys or these What's Poppin' is going to be on playlist. Smell Like Incense and Hey Big Head will definitely be on some playlists. But my official answer has got to be no. I'm not going to keep it in rotation.
Word. Well, before I like fully disappear into my virtual background, I better answer this question. I mean, for 7 tracks and like 3 I liked, and 1 was like barely a song, just basically bars. I'm gonna have to say no. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why you'd have a short project, and none of us know why this one was so short. My opinion is that he really wanted to capitalize on the hype, which is certainly understandable. But just in my opinion, like unless you're trying to do something experimental, and that's why you're going short. If you really want to strike when the iron's hot, like make sure the rest of the content is like up to par. Surely nothing could be as good as that song, What's Poppin'. But there's just not enough other highlights to really bring me back to it, and maybe even to make me check out a full length. I really do think there's talent there, and there's something to look forward to in the future. But until then, I'm definitely thinking this definitely won't be in my rotation, although What's Poppin' will definitely be on some playlists. Well, thanks for getting together again, boys. Another great episode, and we'll see you guys again on In Rotation Podcast.
Peace.
Mm.